All right, let's get right into it. We're going to tackle a really complex and, let's be honest, pretty confusing topic, the ongoing debate about artificial sweeteners and cancer.
You've seen them everywhere, right? Zero sugar, diet, sugar-free. It promises all the sweetness we love, but with none of the calories. But what's the real story here? What does the science actually say about the stuff that makes that possible? Is it really a free lunch, or is there a hidden cost?
Okay, so first things first. Before we can even touch the cancer controversy, we need to get a handle on what these substances actually are and how they got to be in, well, almost everything.
So at their core, they're just that, sugar substitutes. They're chemicals designed to taste sweet. You'll also hear them called non-nutritive sweeteners, which is just a fancy way of saying they have basically 0 calories. And that right there is the magic trick that fuels the entire diet industry.
And this number, wow, this is exactly why they're so widely used. This is how many times sweeter these things can be compared to regular sugar. Because they pack such a punch, you only need an absolutely minuscule amount to get that sweet taste, which is how they keep the calories at 0.
So with something that potent, you'd think it would have to go through some serious safety checks, right? And you'd be correct. So how did they get that official green light? Let's take a look at the established official view from the big regulatory bodies.
The process, at least in the US, is really rigorous. The FDA goes through piles and piles of safety data before anything gets approved for us to consume. And for decades, the official verdict on these 6 approved sweeteners has been the same. Within the acceptable daily intake limits, they're considered safe.
You know, the story of saccharin is actually a perfect example of how science can change its mind. Back in the 70s, there was this huge scare based on studies in male rats, and it even got slapped with a carcinogen warning. But then, in the 90s, scientists figured out the how, the specific biological reason it caused tumors in rats. And it turns out that mechanism just doesn't exist in humans. Our bodies are different. So, in 2000, it was delisted. It's a classic case of science correcting itself with new evidence.
And this slide right here gets to the absolute heart of why we're all so confused. Just last year, one agency within the World Health Organization looked at the data and classified aspartame as possibly carcinogenic. But at the exact same time, another WHO committee and the FDA looked at the same evidence and said, hold on, we disagree. They pointed to what they called major flaws in the studies and stood by its safety. So you have these giant expert organizations looking at the same information and coming to different conclusions. No wonder it's confusing.
So, while the regulators seem to have their position pretty much set, there's this whole other side to the story. There's a different type of evidence that keeps finding these patterns.
This quote is from a massive study in France that followed more than 100,000 adults. And what they found was that the people who consumed the most artificial sweeteners had a small but statistically significant higher risk of developing cancer. And remember, this isn't a lab study with rats. This is data from a huge population of real people living their lives.
But, and this is the huge, flashing red light but, we have to be so careful here. These kinds of studies show a correlation, a link. They absolutely cannot prove causation. Is it the sweeteners, or is it possible that people who drink a lot of diet soda have other lifestyle habits that are the real cause? This data can't tell us. And to make things even murkier, other large studies have found no link at all, so the results are inconsistent.
So to try and solve this puzzle, this gap between the official safety approvals and these nagging population studies, some scientists are asking a totally new question. They're saying, okay, forget the statistics for a second. Let's ask, is there even a plausible biological way a sweetener molecule could cause cancer on a cellular level?
And this is where the science gets really, really cool. Using an approach called network toxicology, researchers are using some serious computing power to map all this out. Think of it like this. They create a list of keys, the sweetener molecules. Then they create another giant list of all the biological locks in the human body that we already know are involved in cancer. Then, they ask the computer to see if any of the keys can fit into any of the locks. And guess what? They think they found some potential matches. One recent study identified 35 of these core targets where sweeteners and cancer pathways might actually cross. And we're not talking about obscure things here. These include some of the heavy hitters of cancer research, like the gene TP53, which is a crucial guardian against tumor growth.
So what this research does is, for the first time, it proposes a plausible biological mechanism. It gives us a theoretical roadmap for how a sweetener molecule might be able to interfere with some of the most important signals in our cells. It's a potential way to connect the dots between the cause and the effect that some other studies have hinted at.
So now we're left with these three very different streams of evidence, right? We have the regulatory science, the observational human studies, and this new molecular modeling. So as a regular person just trying to make a choice, what are we supposed to take away from this?
This table really just lays it all out. Each piece of the puzzle is valuable, but incomplete. The regulatory reviews say they're safe, but they're mostly based on animal studies that might not translate perfectly to us. The big human studies see a pattern, but they can't prove it's the sweeteners causing it. And the new molecular stuff gives us a possible how, but it's still just a theory. It needs to be tested and proven in a lab. Each one has its own strength and its own major weakness. And that's exactly why the debate is still raging.
And just to add one more wrinkle to all of this, the World Health Organization recently dropped a bit of a bombshell. They came out and recommended against using sweeteners for weight control. Not because of a cancer risk, but because when they reviewed all the long-term evidence, they found a lack of benefit and the potential for other undesirable effects. So that just shifts the whole conversation from are they dangerous to are they even helpful for their main purpose?
So at the end of the day, there's no simple yes or no answer right now. The science is very much evolving as we speak. But understanding where the different arguments come from, the limitations of each type of evidence, and the questions that still need to be answered, that is the absolute best first step to making an informed choice that feels right for you.